People who deal with demons generally have no conscience. They are insane and willing to sacrifice everything in the world for strength and profit. But Li Ku felt that she should have some conscience. Whether it's building high-rise buildings for people in the Middle Ages, allowing knights who raise sheep to buy textile machines, allowing elves to play in the entertainment industry in live streaming sales, summoning succubus demons to serve as hotel attendants, using burning legion evil energy to destroy garbage, or allowing orcs to trade their labor for fried chicken and watermelon with peace of mind, all reflect his conscience. Despite offering sacrifices, trading with demons, summoning undead tribes, and having different conspiracies with members of the royal family and nobles, he even had bad ideas about the dragons guarding the world. But he still feels that he has a conscience. At least I wasn't hanging from the streetlight, was I, Li Ku, sir, with conscience, probably. Keywords of the novel. Evil energy does not deceive you. No pop-ups, evil energy does not deceive you. Download the complete text, and evil energy does not deceive you in reading the latest chapters. Chapter 1. The Price of Holy Light. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Price of Holy Light. Sorry, child, but you can't prove that you are a qualified follower of the Holy Light, can you? So I'm sorry, although the Holy Light will favor you, if you want to serve the Holy Light, you still need more tests. The old man in front of Li Ku had a kind expression on his face, his beard hanging down to his chest, emitting a fragrance of an unknown spice. It was thick and smooth, and it looked like a well-maintained beard. On the thick silk robe of the other party, golden thread, gemstones, and broken diamonds together form a magnificent pattern, highlighting the other party's holiness and kindness. And wealth. Blue silk, gold thread, and broken diamonds, as well as sparkling gemstones, are not cheap goods. It is obvious that this magnificent robe may not be affordable for an ordinary farmer to spend their entire life on. But Li Ku knew that this was just the usual clothes of the bishop. He had 3 identical clothes for preaching and several more gorgeous clothes for more important activities. If you want to say why he basically listens to this bishop's preaching and teachings every week, helps the clergy of the church work and does some miscellaneous work every day, and naturally knows the situation of this bishop. And he came here to listen to the path of the holy light and join these cultivators. As for why one must become a holy light cultivator, there are many reasons. The holy light cultivator is dignified, wealthy, and has a noble status, all of which are reasons. But most importantly, the holy light cultivators will not be excluded and have the opportunity to master the power of the holy light. These 2 are the most important for Li Ku. Sorry, child, but isn't this something everyone is doing? If it proves that your faith in the holy light is beyond ordinary people, it would be unfair to others. At this point, the old man glanced at Li Ku, as if moved by her sincerity, and spoke up a method. The knights of the monastery are about to return after clearing away the bandits and cultists. When they arrive, their armor will inevitably have many damages and scars. If someone can help them solve these problems, I think they will be happy to recommend that person to serve in the church. After he finished speaking, a servant walked up to him and spoke beside him. Your Highness, where should you go to the Lord? The bishop nodded and did not speak to Li Ku again. Instead, he walked straight towards the gate of the monastery. It can be seen that the Lord is very eager to see him. At the entrance, there was a carriage pulled by 4 white horses waiting for the bishop. He stepped on a soft stool made of silk and then disappeared completely from Li Ku's sight. Li Ku wanted to say something, but couldn't say anything. Repairing armor is not as simple as it is in games. A simple damage requires a lot of labor to repair. It cannot be said that simply embedding a piece of iron is complete, but rather requires various badges and patterns to decorate. It takes a long time, and the process requirements are also very high, so it's very expensive. But it has to be said that this is indeed a good opportunity. As long as he repairs armor for those knights for free, he can indeed gain the friendship of these knights. At that time, a cultivator who does odd jobs can still obtain it. But he doesn't have the money to do this job. As an ordinary person who travels through this world with his original body, although his appearance has changed back to the age of 16 for unknown reasons, his physical strength still maintains in adulthood. However, his biggest problem is not that his current strength cannot be compared to the farmers here, but that he is a stranger. At the beginning of his journey here, he was imprisoned by the militia as a spy because he didn't understand the language. It wasn't until the Lord's mage came over and cast a spell on him that he mastered some common languages and cleared his suspicion of being a spy. The Lord here, due to Liku's exquisite phone and clothes, as well as completely callous his free hands and feet, doesn't seem like a soldier or spy at all, but rather like a scholar and a nobleman's illegitimate child. So this kind Lord released him and allowed him to live in his own territory, becoming a citizen of the kingdom called Lordaeron. Although the Lord did not make things difficult for him, he still found it difficult to move here. Buy food. You are a stranger, more expensive. Participate in collective welfare activities. You are a stranger, your share belongs to someone else. Work. You are a stranger, so job opportunities are meager, and your already meager salary will become even lower. Because they know you dare not refuse. The only solution is to completely integrate into them and become a part of them. But this method either has money, power, or power. But Liku had nothing and couldn't even leave. Because of his frail physique for the rest of the world, he couldn't survive outside this small town for 3 days. Liku had seen more than once on the edge of the town, wolves the size of motorcycles, spiders the size of beach chairs, and obedient spider children the size of rice cookers. So he can only be a hardworking old man. Forgive others for being bullied, take the initiative to help, do volunteer activities that everyone is unwilling to do things that everyone participates in together, do not complain about being isolated and targeted, and then isolate him with others when the next outsider comes. It's better not to travel through life. Liku sighed and turned to leave the monastery, heading towards the blacksmith shop where she worked. Before his travels, he was considered a craft blogger, doing some work such as restoring armor or sculpting. Every day, we make videos and strange lists for customers, such as ancient sword, ancient armor, and lightweight anime armor. The remaining time is either fishing or learning various forging and weaving techniques. In the modern internet age, everyone is too idle and has all kinds of strange hobbies, which directly leads him to live a more relaxed life. So after coming to this world, he, who was illiterate, didn't have to sell his labor, but found a job repairing and crafting in the blacksmith shop of this world. But as a price, he taught the owner of this blacksmith shop a skill in crafting hand armor, a person who keeps a gloomy face all day and deducts his salary for nothing. As he walked towards the blacksmith's shop, he saw his boss. Taros, a middle-aged man who was always very dirty, was leaning against the warm stone wall and watching Liku instead of turning the stove to the maximum iron. This is very abnormal because in the past, they always had weapons and armor to repair, but today they have nothing. Why, our ugly duckling is trying to turn into a swan again. Taros looked at Liku with a disdainful expression on his face. Liku took a deep breath. Taros didn't say that deducting his salary was the best option. He quickly put on a dirty apron and wanted to go to his seat to continue repairing the lock armor that was not repaired yesterday. However, Taros extended his thick arms and stopped him. Tell me, how did they reject you this time? There was an unquestionable color in his eyes, and Liku knew why, because he didn't want to go to the church. Liku knew what he was worried about, which was nothing more than minor issues with the knights who belonged to the church, such as the maintenance of armor and the repair of minor damages, so he wouldn't come to him again. This will result in him missing a large high-quality order. For this reason, Liku knew that if she didn't reveal the reason, Taros would have to come up with another reason to deduct his salary. Life is already difficult enough, there is no need to lose money on bread. As long as I am willing to repair armor for all knights for free, I can. But before he could finish speaking, Taros burst out laughing. You can join the church, but unfortunately, you are a poor person with only enough money to eat and drink. You can't afford that money, so naturally you won't be able to join. He gave Li Ku a hard pat on the shoulder. Taro sneered, and then looked at Li Ku with a deep meaning. But kid, you have to remember that if you steal something and get killed on the spot, no one will trouble me. It is obvious that the other party thinks that Li Ku will steal things. You know, I don't know. Li Ku was a bit angry. That's not necessarily true. Taro's had a profound meaning and began to think about something. Li Ku didn't argue any further, just shook her sore shoulder, walked aside, took a deep breath, and sat back in her seat. The occasional clanking sound at the blacksmith's shop, as well as the heat wave, began to weave lock armor pieces. However, just as his eyes were a bit sore, thinking that today would also pass through heavy labor, Taros, who had not spoken yet, spoke up. Kid, if you want to get rich, it's not impossible. Li Ku raised her head and looked at Taros in confusion, but the other person showed a smile. Moreover, Li Ku noticed that at some point, the other apprentices in the blacksmith shop had silently walked over. He fell silent for a moment, glanced at the muscles of those people and the hammer in his hand before lifting his head and looking at Taros. What does it mean? Taros walked up to Li Ku, took the awl from his hand, and played with it while speaking. The reason why you are so difficult is simply because you are a stranger, but if you become your own person, you don't have to go to any holy light church, and can you easily earn money and live. Taros's scarred face laughed terrifyingly, and now he's laughing, with a terrifying smile. My own people. That's right, our own people, in the true sense of our own people, are not the kind of people who can be good gentlemen. Taros looked at Li Ku and smiled. Li Ku glanced at the expressionless apprentices and took a deep breath. If you don't agree, you will become a thief, right? Of course I want to be my own person. After saying this, Taros whistled happily, and the apprentices silently dispersed, with only one or two remaining by their side. Great, but you should know that if you want to be your own person, just having superb skills is not enough. You still need to make us believe in you. Taros walked over, his iron pliers-like arm gripping Li Ku's shoulder, making Li Ku feel like he was about to be swallowed by something. And at this moment, Taros's cold and hoarse voice, resembling that of a venomous snake, also penetrated his ears again. And coincidentally, we have a big business that can not only make you your own person, but also allow you to make a profit. He almost pushed Li Ku, leading him out of the interior of the blacksmith shop and towards the shed behind it. I think you have also heard that the knights who eradicated the cultists are coming back. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The Cost of Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The Cost of Life. Li Ku really wants to have other choices. But as he looked at the current situation and pondered, he didn't feel that his existing abilities and capital could break the deadlock. The people around him are all stronger than himself, and he can probably guess why. Compared to this ape-man who evolved from monkeys, these humans of Azeroth are truly titanic creations, life that has degenerated from steel machines. Moreover, the original responsibility of these steel machines was to fight against various ancient gods, and it is impossible for them to lack sufficient martial arts skills. The only thing he can praise in front of people in this world is his familiarity with the plot, plus some knowledge of his past life. But they don't tell you this. They only talk about violence. So the fact is, he has no choice. Our business is very simple, buying low and selling high. Some people give us things they don't need, and we refurbish them before selling them. This is our business. When Taros spoke, there was an indescribable smug expression on his face, as well as a hint of reluctance. So we must have connections, have brains, be big and rough, but people with empty heads cannot do such a job. He took Li Ku out of the small town on a remote path that Li Ku had never seen before. Li Ku had always thought this was a closed small hill, but when the other party led him over, Li Ku realized that there was actually a small path in the hill. He doesn't know what to say, he can only silently follow them forward. Not long after walking, the sky darkened and the group silently lit torches. Then Li Ku saw something moving in the grass. Damn it, wolf cub. Taros let out a low curse, and then 2 apprentices walked out from behind, carrying 2 hammers and rushing towards the grass. Soon, a whimper came out of the grass, and an aging lone wolf was dragged out by them. When the motorcycle-sized wolf was dragged out with its legs, its body was still twitching, but Li Ku knew it was dead. So far, he has never seen a creature that can survive with half of its head smashed. Looking at the other person's murky and desperate eyes, Li Ku knew she didn't have the ability to pity them. Although they were about to die, they still struggled for a while. And my own words may not even have the power to struggle. Watching those people deftly peeling and cramping, Li Ku felt like she was actually the same as this wolf, both flesh from someone else's chopping board. Alright, it's just a damn lone wolf, let's go. Watching him dazzled, Taros once again grabbed his shoulder and led him forward. Then there were not many accidents this time. After walking for about an hour, they saw a group of people, about 20.30 of whom were covering their armor with burlap, and most of them didn't want to look up. They just looked at them with a slanted face and didn't light their torches. Although they did not show any signs, Li Ku could tell the identities of these people from the armor styles on their bodies. Knights sent by Lordaeron. Unlike the local nobility, most of these knights from Lordaeron are war-hardened veterans, with numerous patterns on their armor, representing one deadly battle after another. But what made Li Ku recognize them was their height. Warriors from Lordaeron are generally taller and more robust than those from other places, some of whom can even reach around 2.3 meters, and their physique is matched by their height, with a strong and sturdy physique. This allows them to wear shoulder armor that is nearly 2 centimeters thick, as well as fully covered armor that is about 1 thickness, for combat. Not to mention hitting the current Li Ku 50, but hitting 100 is more than enough. Li Ku felt that the apprentices around her were already sturdy and robust enough, but compared to the people in front of her, they were noticeably inferior. Only Taros can be compared to the other party. As for Li Ku, it can only be said that this is not a barrier that exercise can break through, but a gap called race. You're too slow. When seeing Taros, the first thing the other person said was this. Obviously, after bringing Li Ku, Taros and his companions did indeed move at a slower speed. I have no choice but to bring this person over today, so it's a bit slow. When Taros spoke, he pushed Li Ku and made her stumble, causing Li Ku to involuntarily come to the knight who was speaking. Li Ku was unable to adjust his position in a hurry, so under the moonlight and torches, he could clearly see the knight's face. A robust middle-aged man with a big beard. Li Ku had met him, who was a member of the Knights of Lordaeron and a logistics officer specifically responsible for logistics. Because he had dealt with Taros several times at the blacksmith shop, Li Ku recognized him. Seeing Li Ku, the person frowned and casually swept her aside. Li Ku could tell that he was very dissatisfied with how his face was seen clearly by Li Ku. Stop talking nonsense, let's inspect the goods. He impatiently pointed to the contents of the cart behind him. Taros whistled, and then pulled Li Ku over. He didn't lift a tarp, and Li Ku's heart skipped a beat, because all these cars were brand new, shining armor and blades. These armor pieces are all exquisite. Compared to the exquisite items of this small town, they are the advanced supplies of the Knights of Lordaeron. Most noble families who want to buy such armor also need to take off a layer of leather. If the nobles don't join the army, don't even think about it. As for civilians, civilian people should not think too much about this type of fully covered armor. It is prohibited for civilians to sell it, as they do not hold official positions or titles. Holding it is illegal. Because this thing is not as mobile and inconvenient as regular plate armor. Wearing this armor on your body, you can even perform backflips without being restricted. Killing business. The first thing that came to Li Ku's mind was this, but Taros tightly held on to him without letting him go. Instead, He used the convenience of holding on to Li Ku and pressed a dagger against his left chest. Look at the condition of these things. Li Ku had no choice but to start inspecting these armor pieces. Don't worry about the weapons, someone has already gone to inspect them. But as Li Ku flipped through the armor, her heart grew colder and colder. The armor is intact, although each one has some marks of buckles being cut off, it does not actually affect its use. Even if you don't find a specialized blacksmith, as long as you find a skilled blacksmith, you can repair it. And the most ridiculous time is when the armor at the back, even the buckles and other things are too lazy to be cut off for you, but if you make a few scratches, it's considered finished. Taros clearly saw this too, he sneered and let go of Li Ku. The last few carts were no longer armor or similar items, but rather some gemstones and exquisite objects. Li Keika couldn't quite understand the shape and meaning of these things, but could also roughly guess what ritual vessels they should be. Because among these things, there are also one or two crystal balls and books. Taros was not very interested in these things, he just flipped around a few times casually, then took a photo of Li Ku and turned to the military supply officer. You keep watching. He was completely talking nonsense because Li Ku didn't understand the words of this world at all. The reason why he said this was entirely because the master's mage had cast a spell on him. Taros and the military officer stood together, constantly discussing something, but Li Ku couldn't hear them because their voices were suppressed. But obviously, their discussion was not very pleasant because their voices quickly rose. What I want to say is, you've crossed the line, idiot. The price of things is so high, who do you think we work for? You don't have much experience at first glance, don't think this job is so simple. Fingers thrust fiercely on the slightly stained armor of the military supply officer, and Taros rudely sprayed his spittle at the bearded military supply officer. The opponent was holding the hilt of the sword, and his face was still tired and dusty from the expedition, so when someone pointed at him and scolded him, he was quite impatient. To be honest, Li Ku really felt scared. He was really afraid that they would be silenced. Because even if he doesn't know the words of this world, he is very clear that in the current situation, according to the law of Lordaeron, everyone present must be sentenced one by one. It is usually hanging, and the mildest punishment may be exile or execution by guillotine. So if we can't reach an agreement, we can only pray that the other party will consider the people behind Taros. Otherwise, Li Ku cannot guarantee whether these people will shut up. Taros laughed exaggeratedly and continued to spray his spittle. I really hope you know what you're saying. My sir, after you kill us, do you think you'll be safe and sound? Of course, you don't mind the threat of mud like me, but you must know that after you kill me here, you won't get what you want. As he spoke, Taros patted his money bag, causing the money inside to make a crisp sound. The knight with a lot of wind and frost on his face twitched. Lordaeron is not an easy task. This is not a joke, but a fact. Whether it is daily life, maintaining the dignity of nobility, or maintaining and manufacturing equipment for oneself and family, it is not a simple task. So he really needs this money, and many people need it. What is the reason why everyone bravely kills the enemy? Isn't it for money and status? The oil and water needed to eliminate the cults this time is really too little. That small cult is only a scale of over 100 people and has gathered only a dozen bandits. As a result, His Majesty the King sent 300 knights and 600 soldiers, 10 mages from Dalaran, and even enough supplies. To be honest, the spoils of war are really not evenly distributed. After all, the people sent by His Majesty the King are enough to attack the city. Moreover, the war spoils mage also had to take a big head, as the most precious magical treasures and valuable books of the cultists were plundered by those mages, otherwise the profits would have been barely enough. Even Rivendell, who is not far away, would feel a headache and fall into a passive position when facing their unit. So, everyone can only find other ways to earn some profits. Anyway, those last 2 cars didn't have much value, they were just some cult items that I couldn't sell, so just give them to me. Taro smiled. The things of those cultists are all gilded, and scraping off the gold will make a lot of money, not to mention the gemstones that mages don't like. It's a lot of money if it's done. As for the books, he just casually glanced at them, they were just some erotic novels. Those lofty mages wouldn't pick them up, the truly valuable things had long been taken away. The supply officer fell silent for a moment, and Taros cleverly stuffed a bag of money into his hand, whistling. His apprentices also untied small bags from their belts and threw them in front of the supply officer. Would it be convenient for you? Looking at the unmoved military supplies officers and soldiers, Taros felt a bit nervous. He didn't know if these bribes could persuade the other party. The military officer glanced at the money bag under his feet, then at what Taros had given him. After a moment of silence, he nodded. Of course you can. There are too many things inside. Taros smiled, and so did his men and the soldiers across from him. For a moment, the whole place was filled with a joyful atmosphere. Taros put his finger in his mouth, whistled loudly, and then walked into the convoy with a smile on his face, once again coming to Liku's side. And those soldiers also left the convoy in tacit agreement, allowing these blacksmith apprentices to take control of these vehicles. After casually flipping through a few erotic books he had just read, Taros had to admit that these books were quite attractive to him. So he kept flipping through it, looking for some interesting books, and tonight he went home to read them. But just as Taros flipped through these books, he saw a yellow booklet with no text on it, which was quite disharmonious among these erotic books, and he was quite disappointed. He sneered, saying that a booklet with nothing was just right for a useless person with nothing. So he threw the yellow booklet into Liku's arms. After all, I followed suit, and even for the sake of rules, I had to give this guy something. This thing belongs to you now, and once we share it with you, we'll be completely self-reliant. Liku quickly took the booklet, and before she could read it, she was once again restrained by Taros and walked up to the military officer. The military supplies officer was somewhat puzzled because he had already heard the sound of horses with money coming. What did this guy named Taros want to do in front of him? Do you think there are too many bribes for yourself? He looked at Taros in confusion, while Taros smiled and took out a piece of parchment. Just in case, I wanted to have a contract, and coincidentally, my subordinate was about to join, so he signed it. The military supplies officer frowned. He didn't understand why he had to do this. This kind of thing still requires a contract. Are you afraid that there will be no evidence of guilt when you are tried? But he took the parchment for the sake of bribery, but at first glance, his gaze at Liku became strange. This is a confession letter. Admitting the crime of leading bandits to steal weapons and threatening blacksmiths to sell stolen goods as a leader. He knows why there are so many bribes for him. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Cost of Strength. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Cost of Strength, no problem. The officer glanced at Liku, and if he had followed the teachings of the Holy Light and the supreme laws of the kingdom, he could never have determined this matter. Because this represents framing innocent people. However, he looked at Liku and Taros with a contemptuous smile. Of course you can. He casually signed his own name, and Liku, urged by Taros, also signed his own name. Is that okay now? The military supplies officer looked at Taros, who was satisfied, with a still contemptuous smile on his face. Of course, sir, everyone will be satisfied. Taros smiled and extended his hand, not paying much attention to the knight's contemptuous smile. What happens when something that can make money is looked down upon? However, the knight did not intend to shake hands with him, but gave a cold laugh and left directly. But Liku felt that something was wrong from beginning to end. But he had no choice at all. From the beginning, he had no chance to make any choices. He couldn't say what was wrong, but since Taros didn't say anything and didn't notice anything was wrong, he naturally had nothing to say. Watching the knights leave, Taros sneered and let go of Liku. As long as he hands over this batch of goods and hands over Li Ku and this confession, all his troubles will be solved in one go. There's no way, who made His Majesty Tana's crack down on such things. Only by letting a real smuggler die, can these oppressed civilians survive better. Moreover, it can also solve this troublesome guy. When Taros thought of those people from the Holy Light Church who wanted to smuggle on his behalf, he felt a wave of annoyance. He had no way to deal with those people from the Holy Light Church. So we can only use this method to get rid of this guy named Li Ku. There's no way, business is the biggest. Alright, we should go now. Everyone, be careful not to let those who don't have long eyes see us. He smiled and patted his deputy's shoulder, picking up a cultist dagger from among the miscellaneous items in the carriage to play with. However, the yellow dagger that had previously been stuffed under a pile of miscellaneous items quickly began to change his expression. The weight is incorrect. Taros's face immediately changed. He looked at the dagger in his hand and trembled as he took out his own dagger. Then, he made a cut on the dagger that he thought was made of brass and didn't take to heart. However, the touch of the knife's passing and the color displayed by the yellow dagger in the moonlight made his face change wildly. This dagger is pure gold. He immediately looked at the other cult tools and swept open the ones made of brass. After a moment of hesitation, he immediately shouted out. No more goods. Let's go. But it's already too late. The sound of hooves quickly came from afar, and the surrounding hills suddenly lit up. Armored soldiers appeared in all directions, holding torches and surrounding them. And led by that military supply officer just now. He calmly drew his sword and issued orders to the fully armed soldiers. Kill the leader. Sir Eldwin, I think we have reached a consensus. Captain Gavin, who came to support Erdwin, smiled. According to time, his subordinates should have already caught the smugglers who colluded with the cultists. Of course, after all, we are all bathed in the holy light and the laws of the kingdom. Sir Eldwin also smiled, because the Lordaeron nobleman in front of him was very virtuous, and his stain should have disappeared, and it would not affect business. Of course, the holy light will bless each and every one of us. The head of the local church, Bishop Fran, showed an exceptionally bright smile, because starting today, the Holy Light Church can once again establish a good relationship with a powerful Lord, allowing him and the nobles of Lordaeron to listen to the teachings of the Holy Light. The three of them burst into laughter and bumped their glasses together. Drinking the blood like red wine together, Sir Eldwin showed some drunkenness. He was not very good at drinking, let alone this kind of strong liquor specially brought from Lordaeron. He looked at calm Woolly's powerful Gavin, and although he didn't consider his identity as the captain of the knights, after all, the other party didn't have a fiefdom, he couldn't help but be curious. Do you really have followers of demons among the bandits you have eliminated this time? He is very curious about this. Although it was a matter on his own territory, he always believed that the cultists were just a group of petty bandits. After all, these troubles came from Stansom's side, and he was just an innocent victim. At this point, Gavin became serious and put down his glass with a serious expression in his eyes. Indeed, we didn't pay much attention at first. We thought it was a wizard pretending to be a ghost there, but when we entered, we found out that they were actually holding a summoning ceremony for demons. Bishop Fran was stunned for a moment, but he didn't say much, just silently savoring the wine. Is that demon powerful? Sir Eldwin became even more curious. He had also fought continuously for the king, but when it comes to demons, he really hadn't seen them before. Very impressive, according to those mages' words, they interrupted the ceremony in time, but even so, a few demons still appeared. Gavin's eyebrows furrowed tightly. You may not be able to imagine that just a few things that are less than your knee high, almost like goblins, killed more than 10 well-trained soldiers of mine, and even 2 knights suffered severe burns. And when you killed them, their bodies would even explode. When he recalled things that were even uglier than goblins, he couldn't help but frown. Those little things are wrapped in flames all over their bodies, and can release a green fireball. Their sharp claws can directly tear apart their armor, and their movements are incredibly agile. A single mistake can make them dive into their formation. And the wizards say that those terrible things are just the lowest level of demons. If those cultists succeed, a high-level demon will appear, and at that time, they can't think of any other solution besides being resigned to fate. But at this point, his expression became relaxed. But I think they are exaggerating and just hoping to get more spoils of war. After all, they later took all the books and tools related to those cultists, claiming to find the code used by the other party to summon demons. But forgive me for being so dangerous, what do they need those codes to summon demons for? He was quite dissatisfied with this. If it weren't for those mages taking the big head, how could he argue with such a rural tycoon? The other party has no connections or abilities, and happens to be the best candidate for His Highness Tainares to combat smuggling and arms trafficking. But unfortunately, everyone has to support their family. That's right, these guys who call themselves mages are the least useful. Sir Eldwin nodded, he didn't like the wizard either. I once raised a mage, but this guy who claimed to be the official mage of Dalaran would also set off a few fireballs, and he wouldn't know anything else. He's actually no different from a magician. Just as he was trying to belittle the mage, a soldier suddenly walked in and whispered a few words in Gavin's ear, so Gavin stood up with a smile. Sorry, Lord Erdovan, Baron Rivendell summoned me, so I must leave immediately. However, I believe you will be satisfied with my gift. This is just a pretext, it's nothing more than killing someone else's subordinates and facilitating cooperation between the other party and the church. If you continue to stay here, it will be very embarrassing. Baron Gavin knew that once he left, the Bishop of France would have to say something less elegant to this crude lord. This is really regrettable, but I will look forward to your gift. Erdwin appeared very hopeful, but his expectations made Gavin even more contemptuous of him. Then I won't disturb you. After Gavin finished speaking, he walked out of this not-so-luxurious lord's mansion, and was greeted by the military supply officer that Liku had seen. How is the situation? Everything goes smoothly. The military supplies officer with bloodstains on his body nodded. That's good. Just sir, are we really going to give him this credit? Of course, after all, he gave the money. The knights from Lordaeron left with the money of the smugglers, leaving only a dilapidated and empty blacksmith shop in this small town. And Liku, on the other hand, entered the prison. When the knights wearing full armor launched an attack, Liku almost thought he was going to die. But soon he and the others discovered that the knights had only killed Taros and had no intention of killing them, but had arrested them. However, Liku noticed that the blacksmith apprentices who were in the same situation as him looked at him with a look of schadenfreude, looking only a little scared but not afraid of the law. This made him very puzzled. But soon, after the last prison guard left, he understood what was going on. Just as he was leaning against the wall thinking about how to escape, Liku suddenly felt something was wrong. He turned his head and realized that he didn't know when these blacksmith apprentices had gathered around. You. He looked at the smiling blacksmith apprentices and felt puzzled, but as he looked at their smiles, the name he had signed immediately appeared in his heart. Oh no. That thing has a problem. As soon as a bad idea appeared in his heart, the blacksmith apprentices gathered around him and extended their hands to him. He resisted vigorously, but the power of the earthlings was minimal in front of them. 5 or 6 blacksmith apprentices pressed him to the ground, grabbed his hands and feet, and covered his mouth. A blacksmith apprentice led by him looked at Liku with a smile. Taros was dead and he was the future leader, so he wanted to come first. Holding the stone quietly brought in by the prison guard, the blacksmith apprentice showed a fierce smile. I'm sorry, Mr. Liku, but who asked you to sign a confession letter? So I can only trouble you to tell Taros that I will take care of his wife. Confession letter. Liku suddenly clenched his palm, and he finally knew that Taros had no intention of surviving from the beginning. From the beginning, this guy and that lord were planning to use him as a scapegoat. Damn it. Damn it. Li Ku, who was pressed to the ground by the powerful men with far greater power than himself, could only watch helplessly as the hand holding the stone continued to move towards him. He was unwilling to die like this, and he didn't understand why. He just wanted to live well, and why these thoughts couldn't be satisfied. Power. I need strength. Thinking of the spells in this world, the magic that can make people understand language, the holy light that can directly heal wounds. If he had these powers, he wouldn't even be unable to live a peaceful life. If I have the strength. The strong obsession caused Li Ku's body to explode with tremendous strength, but unfortunately, his physical strength was not enough to complete the rebellion. However, certain forces were moved by his emotions. Placed not far away, alongside those erotic novels, the booty booklet lit up with a green light, and the hidden magic began to quickly appear on the blank page. To be precise, it is activation. Just as the blacksmith apprentice raised the stone in his hand high and made Li Ku realize his conscience, fearing guilt in committing suicide, something appeared in this world. Is the wish to kill all the people here? I agreed, okay. A sweet female voice appeared in the cage, accompanied by a strong smell of sulfur. Everyone's movements were stunned. The blacksmiths looked at the sudden appearance and their movements involuntarily stopped. Even the person who wanted to hit Li Ku with a stone stopped the stone on Li Ku's head. This existence has pink skin, bat wings, and goat feet. However, she is very beautiful, and just a glance will attract all attention to her plump figure and beautiful yet charming face. Without a doubt, this is a succubus. But this existence doesn't care about what's happening in this prison cell now. She just looks at Li Ku in confusion, not understanding why the contract, offerings, and the demands that summon her are not from this kid, but the other person has become her own contractor and the fulcrum of her existence in this world. Strange, the summoner is clearly not from this kid. It is clearly a cult. But it's all the same. She licked her lips with her tongue deep inside and looked at the smiths who were obsessed with looking at her body. What robust young men. Come and let us enjoy. She walked unsteadily towards the group of blacksmiths, who couldn't help but extend their hands and stroke her body. But the next moment, the blacksmith who touched her was whipped by her whip and turned into a cloud of blood foam, bathed in blood and meat sauce. Her smile became even more insane and enjoyable. Blood and slaughter. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Meimo, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Meimo, who responded to Li Ku's call, was indeed Meimo. But she lied. Although her contract did indeed belong to Li Ku was just an insignificant medium. As long as someone with the qualifications of a wizard unwillingly tempted the evil energy inside, this booklet would complete the ritual that the cult disciples had actually completed. However, even if Li Ku does not trigger this medium, she can still descend into this world. Because this succubus was actually successfully summoned a long time ago, it only saw the knights led by Sir Gavin, so it did not appear. Otherwise, when Taros died in despair, she would have been able to come to this world. Yes, although Li Ku is her contractor, she has no control over her at all. Sacrifices are given by others, rituals are done by others, and requests are made by others. If it weren't for his mistake that he became the cornerstone of this demon's existence in this world, then he would not be any different from those blacksmiths. The demon's whip kept waving, and every time she swung it, a strong man screamed and fell down, then was pulled to his side by the demon and killed. Li Ku looked at this very tempting demon in terror, watching her smile as she used a whip to break the neck of a big man and then threw his body aside. Blood splattered everywhere, and the entire scene appeared very absurd and terrifying, making people doubt whether what they saw was the real world. He felt like he was in a dream. Each of those big men could beat him 10 times, but in front of this demon, these big men were like toys with no resistance. In just a short while, those blacksmiths turned into blood and severed limbs on the ground. Ha ha ha. The smell of blood. The smell of blood. A paw pierced into the chest of a blacksmith, and the demon laughed and kept tearing at his body with its sharp claws. However, while laughing wildly, she saw Li Ku hiding in the corner with a face full of fear. Watching him look at him in terror, the succubus threw away the last surviving blacksmith and casually snapped its fingers. One by one, magic formations appeared at her feet, and little demons with their teeth and claws appeared at her feet. After seeing the world clearly, it let out a cheer and rushed towards the other cells. Meimo ignored the lower-level demons and instead walked towards Li Ku, who was hiding in the corner. Her graceful figure, even the supermodel figure that Li Ku had seen in her past life, was not worth mentioning in front of this woman, and she had a temperament that made people want to get close and offend. Even though he is now filled with great fear in his heart, he cannot distinguish between reality and dreams, and cannot resist the temptation of this temperament to do something to the other person. Meimo lifted Li Ku's chin and looked at the frightened boy with a satisfied smile. "Don't be so scared, I was summoned by you, wasn't I? What I do is what you most want to do in your heart." Meimo smiled happily. She came to this world specifically when Li Ku was most desperate and unwilling, because the sacrifices paid by those foolish cultists could not make her truly exist in this world. Once the contract time was up or she did not fulfill the contract, she would be sent back. So, she must have someone continue to summon him. "Remember my name, lucky boy. My name is Métis. As long as you can summon me, I can fulfill all your demands, whether it's killing your enemies, giving you the power of evil energy, or..." She smiled and grabbed Li Ku's trembling hand. "This. But there is a price to pay, not to mention anything else, the price for her happiness is death. Tortured to death by her." At this moment, Li Ku's mind was blank, and he only had the emotion of fear left, because the woman in front of him showed violence that he could never resist. "Ha! You will accept it." Métis chuckled lightly, believing that Li Ku would accept it after gaining the power of evil energy. "This spell can make you stronger and use it well." She pressed her hand on Li Ku's head, and a green energy suddenly poured into Li Ku's brain, making him feel a terrifying but intangible substance rushing into his body. And at the same time, countless unknown knowledge appeared in his mind. A knowledge of magic that extracts its own vitality and soul, and transforms it into evil energy. The vast amount of knowledge and energy pounded Li Ku's brain, causing him to involuntarily scream and even making Métis burst into laughter. Because she did it on purpose. When Li Ku fainted due to excessive impact, Métis reluctantly released his hand and licked his lips with some regret. Interesting. She just touched Li Ku's soul and found that he was a very interesting guy. In her heart, she actually believed that there was justice and peace in this world, and it was very naive. He naively believed that there were indeed strong people willing to uphold justice for the weak in this world, wealthy people would provide food and supplies to the poor and weak, and a country's leader would make all the lower-class civilians literate, eat and dress warmly, without worrying about starving or freezing to death. The common people feel that someone dying from cold and hunger is the king's problem rather than their own, and they can even talk about the king's wrongdoing on the street without being told a secret. There will be soldiers who would rather starve themselves than touch the food of civilians. Officers will execute any soldier who seizes civilian supplies, even their own relatives. Civilians can unconditionally trust the soldiers of this country and even willingly entrust their family and property to a soldier on duty. I even feel that there are kings and lords who will build hospitals and schools for those civilians, allowing them to live peacefully until the end of their lives, and even remain steadfast in this, as if they have truly seen it. Absolutely ridiculous, he's just an idiot. To be honest, if it weren't for the lack of any holy light in his body, she would have felt like she had encountered a divine selection of holy light. Tormenting such people is the most interesting thing. However, now Li Ku is just a dim sum. Although torturing him makes her happy, she needs more killing and torture. Next, it's dinner. She showed a sickly smile and slapped away the iron gate that had trapped Li Ku, walking towards the small town that was beginning to be noisy. Bishop Fran had a great time drinking and was very satisfied with the Lord's attitude. After discussing for a long time, they decided to use Li Ku as the next smuggler. Because he has a handle in their hands and is also easy to control. Finally, both of them praised the holy light. However, what the Lord did not know was that Bishop Fran sneered after getting into the carriage. Holy light. His fingertips lit up with a golden light, which was both righteous and grand, but his eyes were indifferent because his holy light cultivation was not outstanding. And the reason why he was able to become a bishop is actually because he is wealthy, has connections, and is willing to do dirty work. Money is my holy light. He couldn't help but sneer, but the next moment, his carriage was smashed by a whip, showing him a beautiful woman. Métis looked at the weak user of the holy light with a smile on his face. So, can money save your life? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Selection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Selection. When Li Ku woke up again, she was still a bit confused. But when he saw clearly the limbs and broken arms around him, as well as the scattered organs and bruises on the ground, there was only one thought in his heart. Run. The farther you run, the better. He ran out of the prison in a panic, but not everyone he saw along the way was complete. Some were burnt, some were torn to pieces, and others had their heads completely turned into murals on the wall. He ran faster and faster, constantly throwing the scene of hell on earth behind him, but he always felt that those incomplete corpses would jump out at some moment and turn into monsters to kill him. Or perhaps that woman would swing the whip around his neck when he was about to escape, causing him to fall into despair. But none of them. The body remained motionless, emitting nothing but blood and a foul odor. It only shook when it collided. At the moment he rushed out of prison, there was no whip wrapped around his neck that plunged him into despair, but rather allowed him to break out of prison well. But Li Ku was stunned. No one came to scare him, but he scared a flock of crows. The once bustling town has now turned into a wasteland. The women fell to the ground in disheveled clothes, covered in blood stains and scars, while the men's bodies were fragmented, with no one relatively intact. Even the children who bully themselves on a daily basis, steal things from themselves recklessly, or smash themselves with mud and stones, have fallen to the ground one by one, turning into corpses. They are all dead. Those who have bullied themselves, those who have not bullied themselves, those who have excluded themselves, those who have not excluded themselves, those who have malice towards themselves, those who have helped themselves, those who have not helped themselves. They are all dead. Li Ku looked at everything in a daze. He saw the Lord, who only had one head left, hanging high on a tree branch, with a ferocious expression in his eyes. He saw the Lord's son, a playboy, with only one head left, but with a strange smile. The groom by the well gave him advice, and there was a decent person named Lao Bo, a very popular name. On the other side, there was the hostess of the bakery, whose bread was as white as her chest and one of the few women who wouldn't raise the price of Li Ku. Li Ku even fantasized about doing something with her. Next to this woman, there are soldiers from this town who embrace each other, with strange smiles on their faces, and stab each other's hearts with swords. And that wizard, who made him envious and allowed him to speak the words here, his brain was shattered. This fact made him feel dizzy, and this already familiar place suddenly turned into a purgatory. His brain refused to believe such things because he was still trying to integrate into it yesterday. Is this hell? Or somewhere? Am I still alive? He looked at his hand covered in blood and couldn't help but ask, because he really can't be sure about this now. The impact of everything in front of me is really tremendous. This is human, and you are also living well. Suddenly, the voice of the bakery hostess rang out, and Li Ku turned his head in surprise. He was now very willing to believe that he had accidentally dozed off and had a nightmare. And in front of him, there did indeed appear the plump and graceful figure of the bakery hostess. But on her fair and tender hands, she held a whip with meat foam. This is reality. This is hell. Because a living demon is right in front of him. What a wonderful fear, and with this expression, I really like you more and more. Métis greedily took a breath, and the fear conveyed from Li Ku was quite pure and of high quality, as if he had never seen a dead person before. This made her like Li Ku even more, liking her negative emotions. These negative forces made her feel extremely happy, and even Li Ku's negative emotions alone were equivalent to her busy work in the middle of the night. Moreover, the quality is also quite high, even if it's okay, it's still very fresh. Li Ku's fear was quite fresh and irresistible. If she could stay for a long time or take action against Li Ku, she would definitely not waste it. She would slowly torture Li Ku with torture tools, listen to Li Ku's screams, taste Li Ku's fear, despair, and pain. But who made her choose Li Ku as the starting point of this world? But now it looks pretty good too. Be able to savor this meal slowly. Li Ku doesn't know how to face this enchanting demon. The question is based on what the other person said yesterday. That's right, I just did what you wanted to do. You wanted to kill these people, and I helped you do it. And you wanted to do something with that bakery hostess, so I became her. Look, how good I am to you, I have satisfied you with everything you want. Métis walked towards Li Ku with a smile step by step, while Li Ku retreated step by step, her body trembling even more. This made Métis burst into laughter uncontrollably. Remember, kid, these people all died because of your ideas. She gradually forced Li Ku, but in fact, it was not so. She killed the people in this town according to the contract of the cult disciples. Even without Li Ku, she would attack this town tonight. But at that time, Li Ku will also die. So, it's best for you to leave here quickly, otherwise your fate won't be very good. To cover up the truth here, you. Métis showed a meaningful smile on the face of the bakery lady. Will become a scapegoat. After she finished speaking, she felt a bit regretful. She didn't have much time left, otherwise she would definitely be able to do more. So she gave Li Ku a nostalgic look, spoke again, and drew a circle in the air. A pink heart appeared in mid-air, shooting into Li Ku's body at a speed that Li Ku couldn't react to. Calm down and do what you should do. Being shot by the red love, Li Ku suddenly felt her brain go blank and her whole body felt a bit dizzy. However, his thinking became increasingly clear. The situation here is irreparable. Whether it is my fault or not that led to this demon killing these people, the people of Lordaeron will not let me go. I can only survive by leaving here. And leaving here requires money. If you want to start over, you also need money. He has no money. And those who have money no longer need it. Li Ku's eyes turned to the corpses and the collapsed houses. At this moment, a warm embrace embraced Li Ku's body, and a cute and beautiful face appeared on Li Ku's shoulders, accompanied by a gentle voice. I will help you, but hurry up, someone will soon discover this place. As Métis spoke, she gave Li Ku a push. Under the influence of her spell, Li Ku also became firm and walked step by step towards the body of the female bakery owner. She reached out to the white and tender chest, grabbed the other person's necklace, and slowly untied it. Tears also flowed down at the same moment, but although his hands were constantly trembling, he still firmly placed the necklace in his arms. He doesn't want to die. Métis watched the scene with satisfaction. Although you didn't want me to kill them, the decision to take their inheritance and keep myself alive. The time for the contract has come, and the figure of the demon slowly disappears. But you made it yourself. This time, it's the truth. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Reality. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Reality. Did you hear that? The people in the town west of Stansom are all dead. The investigating mage said it could be the remnants of the cult's alliance with the bandits. I heard that even the Lord's master has died, and he and his son have lost their heads together. Didn't it mean that those cultists had already been eradicated? Humph, You don't know that those noble lords from Lordaeron. Speaking is speaking. What are you doing with this? A red-haired and well-built tavern waitress suddenly rushed over and placed her beer heavily on the table, interrupting the drunkards from wanting to point fingers at national affairs. The splashing beer splattered all over the faces of these people, but they could only smile and watch as the tavern woman greeted them, wiping their faces with the cloth she patted on the table. Sorry, Jennifer, but you can't waste alcohol either. One of the drunkards looked regretfully at only half of the wine left and spoke with some regret. Ha, just treat this cup as if I were asking you to shut up. Jennifer gave him a nonchalant glare. In short, what should be said and what should not be said, you better have a clear mind. Otherwise, get out of here. Although she is a 16-year-old girl, the red-haired Jennifer has been working in this tavern for nearly 12 years. She knows very well that she cannot be polite to these drunkards, and when it's time to be fierce, she should be fierce. Got it, got it. Cheap drinkers naturally won't be rude to girls they've seen since childhood, and Jennifer is also right. In this sensitive period, it's better not to talk too much about these things. And their town is a gathering and trading place for several nearby towns, as well as a supply station on the trade route between Stansom and the Lordaeron royal city. A large number of merchants and soldiers rest here, so if they are really heard by people who shouldn't be heard, it will be their own misfortune. Their lords will not plead with other lords for their grievances. You better know. Jennifer snorted coldly, and after all the drunkards had taken the beer, she picked up the tray in disgust and, amidst the pitiful gazes of the other drunkards, splashed the drink at the door. But at this moment, a haggard figure just walked in and was splashed with these residual wines. The already haggard figure became even more disheveled. The tavern burst into laughter, and Jennifer rarely makes mistakes. Ha! Jennifer! You're causing trouble. One by one, the strong drinkers immediately stopped their conversation and looked at them with smiles as they watched Jennifer grow up. Jennifer's white cheeks instantly turned red, and she immediately took off a clean towel from her waist and welcomed the guests who had been splashed all over her body. If you're an acquaintance, just apologize and have some wine with you, but the person in front of you is a stranger. I'm sorry, sir. I was too reckless. Jennifer wanted to wipe the guest's body, but was grabbed by the other person's wrist. A clearly audible voice of haggard and weak also appeared in her ear. It's okay, just give me a towel. Also, prepare some food and water for me. Li Ku looked at the plump and beautiful girl, but there was not much turbulence in her heart. Although this girl is very beautiful, unfortunately, she is not as charming as the broth being cooked in the other party's shop. He has been walking all day, walking without a moment's rest. Constantly moving away from that town, that demon has finally arrived at a town where he only wants to eat something and rest quickly. His pale and weak face startled Jennifer, and she looked at Li Ku with some fear, because Li Ku's current state was really frightening. The dry lips and bloodshot eyes all indicate that this person is in an extremely repressed state. Okay. Sir. I'm going now. She immediately turned around to prepare, and those drinkers who watched her grow up saw that Li Ku was not going to find fault, so they laughed heartily and continued to joke. Haha. Jennifer, you should give them a discount. Good job. Kid. Men should be more open-minded. Let me toast you. Ah, Jennifer. Can this drink be considered free for me? Jennifer's face turned even redder as she quickly turned a bowl of thick broth from a large pot on one side, took a piece of bread, and cursed back while receiving water. You're dreaming. She quickly brought the things to Li Ku's face, and Li Ku also sat trembling in her seat. Without saying a word, she picked up the water and took a sip. The sweet water moistened his throat and made him feel alive again. The delicious stew and hot toast also made him forget the rice and mantou in his hometown and eat them without saying a word. The sweetness, meaty taste, delicious fatty taste, and the feeling of her body gradually becoming fuller made Li Ku's eyes gradually blur. Until now, he was able to determine something. I really survived. Mechanically and awkwardly eating the food in front of him, his hurried appearance clearly frightened the hotel waitress on the side. The red-haired girl looked at him devouring it, instinctively holding the tray to her chest, and looked at the young and beautiful woman with black hair in front of her with some fear. I was just startled. It looks pretty good now. She had this idea in her heart, but was immediately called aside by the greeting of the drinker, and continued her work without looking at Li Ku again. Li Ku quickly finished the meal, licking the remaining juice at the corner of his mouth, sighing with satisfaction, and then reaching into his pocket, ready to pay the bill. However, his hand did not touch the wages he earned at the blacksmith shop. He frowned and immediately thought that when he was arrested, all the money on his body would be taken away. After hesitating for a moment, his hand reached into the pocket he was carrying on his back. But the next moment, his hand was pulled back like an electric shock, making him look at the pocket in front of him with a pale face. Because he touched a necklace belonging to the bakery lady. He felt that his hand was burned, but the fact was that there were no scars on his hand, which was completely due to his psychological effects. Li Ku let out a deep sigh and didn't touch the package again. Instead, as Jennifer passed by with a plate, she grabbed the waitress's arm and spoke in the midst of her puzzled gaze. How much is it? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Cost. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Cost. Li Ku felt very foolish. In that enchanting spell, he almost searched for all the valuable things in the town. Whether it was jewelry, necklaces or gold coins, everything valuable and easy to carry was selected by him, and he took away the most precious-looking items. Then he missed the gold bar because he couldn't open the treasure chest. However, only the bakery owner's necklace, which was not very valuable, was held by him all along. So, when touching the necklace, Li Ku felt a strong sense of guilt, making him unwilling to use the money to pay for himself. Although that was what he searched for himself. Although he was under the spell of the succubus at the time, his consciousness was very clear, and he chose to plunder the property of the deceased townspeople while being able to think. Because this is the best solution obtained through calm and rational thinking. The laws of Lordaeron, or in other words, the enforcers, will not spare him. Li Ku does not think that medieval laws were so sound that they would respect human rights more. I don't think these people would be so friendly to him as an outsider. So he must leave this place where only he survived, in order not to become a scapegoat. But from the beginning, he didn't believe what the demon said. It was he who summoned him and let this demon kill everyone. He hasn't been so foolish yet. Qinghui 80 copper coins. This little money is not expensive, but when he went to touch it again, the scorching feeling attacked him again, causing him to forcefully withdraw his hand. What's wrong? Jennifer looked at him in confusion, thinking he didn't have the money to pay the bill. Li Ku quickly shook his head. He just touched these things and thought of the tragedy there. Stirred into meat filling, split open, with steel needles inserted into the eyes to be cooked, baked. That is a scene worthy of the devil's name. No, it's just something else. After he finished speaking, he continued to pay, but Jennifer frowned. She felt that Li Ku was finding fault for splashing alcohol on the other person before. But when she thought about splashing alcohol on the person in front of her, she didn't care about these small things anymore, so she just showed a bright smile and responded. Forget it, I'll waive this order for you, and we'll even it out. Looking at her bright smile, Li Ku didn't know what to say and could only thank the other person. Thank you. It's okay. But not next time. Jennifer responded to Li Ku with a smile, then shook her chest and left. But after walking away, she painfully calculated how much less money she had earned today and sighed. I lost money. Li Ku, on the other hand, breathed a sigh of relief and leaned back on the chair in the tavern, picking up the leftover bread from her plate, wiping away the juice from the broth while contemplating her future. Months of hard work have all gone down the drain, and one mistake could even become a scapegoat. Such a thing really makes Li Ku unable to laugh. All of this was too sudden for him. Suddenly traveling, being cruelly excluded by medieval people, suddenly being pulled to smuggle, suddenly being caught by one's own smuggling gang, suddenly signing a confession, suddenly being killed by one's accomplices again. Suddenly, a succubus appeared, claiming to have summoned him. Then, it was the succubus that killed everyone except him, and used an unknown spell to control him, constantly searching for valuable things before leaving the bloody town. It can be said that until now, most of the obstacles he has encountered since crossing the river have occurred suddenly. The reason why he cannot resist is also very simple. He has no strength. Looking at my own hands, they have the power of a normal adult on Earth, but in this world, they are not even as strong as children aged 12 or 13. Moreover, pure brute force is not worth mentioning in front of those spells. The mage could easily make him master a language, and the demon could easily slaughter the entire town. Those strong soldiers, Archbishop Fran, who wielded the power of the Holy Light, or Mr. Ferna, who wielded arcane powers, all died under the absolute power of that demon. Power. Li Ku was reciting this vocabulary, but it seemed to trigger some keyword. His dull brain suddenly hurt, and waves of obscure knowledge appeared in his mind. Along with them, there were also enchanting laughter. Accept my gift, little cutie, believe me, you will be very satisfied. Li Ku held on to the corner of the table and didn't let himself run over immediately. He took a deep breath and stuffed the juicy bread into his mouth, chewing slowly while checking for the sudden news that came out. But he just took a brief glance and then froze. Evil energy. The knowledge that suddenly came to his mind were two spells, one on how to use vitality to create evil energy, and the other on how to extract his own and various other biological vitality spells. Evil energy. Li Ku is not unfamiliar, to be precise, any Warcraft player will not be unfamiliar. An energy generated by tearing apart the soul and consuming vitality. The harm of this thing is similar to or even greater than nuclear radiation. Wherever you go, there is not a single blade of grass growing, which can lead to various mutations. If the land contaminated by evil energy is not purified by other powerful forces, there will be no living beings living in it for hundreds of years. Not only that, the evil energy will continue to expand on its own. That is to say, if you are unable to handle the pollution of evil energy and naturally have no ability to purify it, then the evil energy will gradually turn the entire planet into the land of evil energy. The users of evil energy will gradually become distorted, extreme and sensitive, and more aggressive and fierce. Basically, no one who is associated with evil energy can maintain their original personality, and they have become exceptionally violent and extremist. However, it is very powerful. Its destructive power is absolute number one in the world, and it is quite easy to get started. Even if you are only around 5 or 6 years old with intelligence, as long as you want to learn, you can learn how to use evil energy. Even if you don't have those powerful evil energy spells, simply storing evil energy in your body can make your strength several times greater than before. Moreover, evil energy can also make people irritable and aggressive, fearless of pain and fear. Those warriors who have been infused with evil energy will not feel pain until the last drop of blood dries up, and can continue to fight. Orc sorcerers who have studied evil spells for 2 or 3 months can even fire spells with mages who have studied spells for over a decade, and even gain the upper hand. It can be said that evil energy is this power. Just right for someone like him who urgently needs strength. Li Ku has nothing to say. Demons are truly demons, and their grasp of the human heart is truly remarkable. That Métis knew very well that after leaving, he would inevitably crave power immensely, and his weak power, in this world full of strong men, would one day use evil energy. And in order to obtain more ways to use evil energy, those powerful demon spells must either be studied by themselves or summoned by demons. I seem to have no choice. So, what is the cost? Li Ku looked at her palm, sensing the evil energy left by Métis in her body, and couldn't help but think. However, before he could think for a moment longer, the slanting sun told him something cruel. If he doesn't want to sleep on the streets and uses the belongings in his package, he has only one choice. Find a job. But just as he was about to leave, Jennifer, who had been observing him, suddenly approached him and smiled at him. Do you seem to need help? Looking at the enthusiastic girl, Li Ku hesitated for a moment and then nodded. Yes, I need help. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Dreams and Bubbles. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Dreams and Bubbles. So Jennifer tilted her head, letting the beautiful and smooth red hair slide around her fair and tender neck. This girl had a beautiful head of long wavy hair, and her figure and appearance were completely capable of supporting such a hairstyle. However, the most appropriate thing is that there is also a hint of greenness on her body, making her rose-like girl even more alluring. Of course, I actually need some help here. My fence is broken, so I want to find someone to repair it for me. Jennifer glanced at Li Ku and asked in a consultative tone. If you can help me fix the fence, then I can let you stay in the hotel room for a day and include your meals for that day. Okay. Li Ku agreed without any hesitation, making Jennifer show a happy expression. It's not that she can't find someone else to help her fix the fence, but there are too many. Many people in this town are willing to help her repair the fence. Whether it's the boys she grew up with or the uncles who are still unmarried, they are all happy to repair her fence. However, none of them wanted to repair the fence. Jennifer was very helpless about this. If she approached them, they would definitely take advantage of the opportunity to fix the fence and pester her incessantly, making her very annoyed. Even the fence may not be able to be repaired very well. So, we can only find someone who has no thoughts about her. Thank you very much. You promised to help me repair the fence, which really helped me a lot. Jennifer breathed a sigh of relief, but she immediately remembered. By the way, you know how to fix fences, right? Looking at the other person's questioning expression, Li Ku reluctantly smiled. Don't look at me like this, I'm actually a blacksmith. Blacksmith. Jennifer looked up and down at Li Ku. Although Li Ku looked a bit thin and weak, his muscles couldn't be fake, so she nodded skeptically. Okay, then follow me and I'll take you to fix the fence. But if you can't fix it well, don't blame me for not giving you a chance. Okay. Li Ku stood up and followed the girl towards the back. As he passed by the drunkards, he still saw many unhappy faces. A robust young man stood up with a flushed face, holding up his glass and shouting at Jennifer. Hey! Jennifer! How could you ask an outsider to fix your fence? Look at me. I'm so strong. I can definitely fix your fence quickly and well. And plant a large area of roses to complement your beauty. He was a bit unsteady when he spoke, and even the food residue in his mouth sprayed out, making Jennifer's face show a helpless expression. You better take care of yourself first. Drink less. Billy. You're almost losing your footing. Nonsense. I can still drink it. As long as you're happy. Jennifer sighed and didn't pay attention to the hilarious drinkers anymore. Instead, she continued to lead Li Ku towards the kitchen. As soon as she entered the kitchen, Li Ku smelled more of the aroma of meat and soup. In the kitchen, several strong women were busy, and when they saw Jennifer coming, they only glanced at Li Ku and continued their work. After talking to a sturdy woman, Jennifer took the tray from her hand and walked out amidst the curses of the drunkards outside. You idiots whose brains have been soaked in alcohol. Your hall mother has served you alcohol. The sound of this robust woman caused a commotion, giving Li Ku another unreal feeling, as if the previous cruel experiences were really a dream. It feels like I am in a relatively peaceful world. The people in our town are very enthusiastic, didn't they scare you? Jennifer smiled and glanced at Li Ku, noticing that the girl really liked the atmosphere here. It's okay. Li Ku tightened his cloak tightly. If the demon had not descended on the small town where he was located, it would have been similar. He had observed almost everything in just a moment, and the girl in front of him should be the owner of this tavern, and she had been watched and grown up by those drinkers. Because no one was slacking off while this girl was delivering wine. In this era of taverns, if such beautiful girls were to serve as taverns, they would inevitably be taken advantage of, or rather, when they came to do this, they themselves had the intention of doing such business. After all, this world is just the Middle Ages. But it is obvious that this girl is not such a person. She is likely to give drinks because she likes such a lively atmosphere. Just as Li Ku was thinking, they came to the vegetable garden behind the tavern, which was filled with lettuce, pumpkins, and some tomatoes. But the most eye-catching thing is still a fence that is clearly damaged by something. Oh, what you need to fix is the fence over there. Jennifer's face showed a helpless expression. Sorry, I didn't explain it clearly to you before, but I need you to make it break well, but it's not so easy to break to avoid hurting people. As for the reason. Before she could finish speaking, a passionate voice appeared around the fence. Jennifer. With an obvious excited voice, Li Ku walked over and then saw a sturdy black horse rushing towards her under the control of his master. He tried to jump up, but collided with her house's fence, shattering the not-so-sturdy fence. And controlling this horse was a handsome blonde young man who appeared to be full of enthusiasm. He was looking at Jennifer next to Li Ku with a silly smile on his face, completely ignoring Li Ku on one side. Do you understand? With a sigh, Jennifer looked at Li Ku on the side. Li Ku nodded and saw the aristocratic emblem on the silly boy's body, indicating that he was a nobleman. Taking a glance at Jennifer's plump figure and beautiful cheeks, Li Ku knew why. Beauty is also a sin. Then let's do the work. Jennifer's face was full of energy, but when the aristocratic fool looked over, she smiled again. Hey Sean, didn't you go to participate in His Highness the Prince of Arthas' nightly selection? Why did you come back so soon? End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Price of Beauty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The Price of Beauty. Don't mention it, Jennifer. Your Highness the Prince of Arthas' choice for the guard has already been made. I didn't make it to the list yet. The noble young man named Sean appeared very polite. When Li Ku passed by to pick up the tools there, he gave Li Ku a seat, which was completely different from when Li Ku saw other nobles. Of course, this may also be the reason why he maintained his demeanor in front of Jennifer. After all, if he had really been polite, he wouldn't have broken in on horseback. Picking up a hammer and nail on one side, as well as the prepared wooden board, Li Ku walked towards the damaged fence he first saw when he arrived. After observing the appearance of other fences, he began to repair them. As for what Jennifer is talking about with that person named Sean, it has nothing to do with him. The style of the fence is quite simple, and Jennifer's requirements are not very difficult for Li Ku. Moreover, the wood prepared on one side is of the same size as the wood used for these fences, which is very convenient. So he quickly started working, and the clanging sound was clearly a bit disturbing, which made Sean look at Li Ku with some dissatisfaction. But looking at Li Ku's unfamiliar face, he just frowned and didn't say anything, but looked at Jennifer. By the way, Jennifer, our family is hosting a banquet these days. Would you be interested in attending? If so, I would be happy for you to be my dance partner. His face was undoubtedly filled with enthusiasm, but Jennifer hesitated a bit. Sean, isn't that your engagement party? Isn't it appropriate for me to go? She politely declined. Who cares about that woman, Jennifer? I prefer someone who understands me and I also know to be my dance partner. Sean's face showed a disdainful expression, as if he didn't care about the noble girl who would become his fiancée. Sorry, Sean, as you know, I'm just the daughter of a businessman and not suitable for attending such a banquet. Jennifer shook her head. Although her father was a friend of the Lord, he was actually just a subordinate. If there was a position, she couldn't go either. But in such an occasion, people like her are not suitable to appear. And she doesn't want to cause trouble either. You're different, Jennifer. Sean was a bit anxious and wanted to grab Jennifer's shoulder, but Jennifer just took a gentle step back and avoided Sean. Sorry, I'm just like everyone else, Sean. Jennifer shook her head. She didn't see any love in Sean's eyes, there was only one kind of possession. Sean's gaze was no different from that of those young drinkers. Sean wanted to say something more, but just then, a stern voice suddenly sounded. Sean. The voice was somewhat angry, and Sean's body stiffened. He had to turn his head and look in the direction of the sound. That is a robust middle-aged man with flowing red hair. It's also his father. Did you forget what I said to you? Don't disturb the townspeople. Look at what you've done. This sturdy middle-aged man was wearing armor and rode over on a black horse, with a disappointed expression in his eyes. Sean looked at his father with a disgruntled expression on his face. He muttered something that nobody had heard, then angrily grabbed his horse and walked out of the vegetable garden. And the old man didn't say a word throughout, just stared at Sean and Jennifer beside him. It wasn't until his son left the garden that he untied a bag from his waist and threw it in front of Jennifer. Ask your craftsman to make this fence stronger for me. It would be best if it could be the kind that could kill people. A crisp sound came from the bag, while Jennifer sighed and bent down in front of her lord, revealing her body curves. Yes, Lord. The Lord stared fixedly at Jennifer, and after she picked up the bag of money, he left with a cold snort. Li Ku, who watched the whole process, had no feelings. The girl in front of her was in trouble, but his troubles were even greater, and he had no interest in such things. If you want to say why he has nothing to do with girls, and he doesn't have the strength or qualifications to manage them either. He doesn't have that mood either. He pities the girl, who pities him. However, Jennifer had no intention of leaving. Instead, she took the bag of money and walked to Li Ku's side. Are you curious? Li Ku didn't even lift her head. Not really. So you won't stay here for too long, will you? I don't know, it depends on whether I find a job or not. Then you won't stay here for too long because I've been with you for too long. Li Ku had nothing to say. He had experienced this feeling before and knew that Jennifer was telling the truth. In this medieval era, the situation of outsiders was similar to this. Relying on others, being excluded by others, not being one's own. It's easy to kill someone. But he still didn't stop his work, but continued to repair the fence. Since you won't stay here for too long, then I'll say it. The Lord's son wants me to be his lover because many people keep saying that the woman he wants to marry is a promiscuous person, and everyone is pitying him. But I won't pity him because the person who spread these words is his follower. Jennifer suddenly spoke up, it seemed like she had been holding it for a long time. And I've been there before. That girl is a very pure and beautiful person, and Sean will definitely like her, so Sean just wants me to pity him. He wants me to pity him and then make me sleep with him. Worst of all, I don't even know if our Lord has similar thoughts about me. She sneered. So let's see what my beauty has brought me. Li Ku just listened quietly, but her hand movements did not slow down, continuing to repair her own fence. However, at this moment, a figure appeared in front of the fence that had been knocked open before, with a horse behind him. That's right, miss. Your beauty can only bring you disaster and there are many troubles, so we can only invite you, or your beauty will disappear. The person covered their face and Jennifer instinctively stood up, grabbing Li Ku's arm and trying to pull her back into the kitchen. But it's too late. It seems that because Li Ku was also here, the person did not pull out the sword from his body, but opened a bottle and threw it over before Jennifer could react. Jennifer couldn't dodge and her beautiful face was splashed with the liquid. Ah! She let out a heart-wrenching scream, losing her previous elegance and composure. And her beauty also disappeared with it. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. The Power of Evil Energy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The Power of Evil Energy. Some of the corrosive liquids also splashed onto Li Ke's body, but fortunately they did not harm him, only burned his clothes. But Jennifer was different. She fell to the ground with a mournful cry, her hands unconsciously covering her face, but Li Ke still saw clearly that her originally full red lips had already revealed some pure white teeth. Even a portion of the gums were burned. It has been completely disfigured. But that's not all. The person took out 2 more small bottles, opened the stopper, and looked at Li Ke. I don't think you're being uninterested, are you? He had a smile on his face, but Li Ke didn't believe him at all. Sure enough, at the moment when the other person's words fell, the 2 small bottles in their hands hit him and Jennifer's chest, one in front and one behind. At this moment, Li Ke didn't think about why the other party wanted to attack him. He just immediately picked up the pile of wood next to him and smashed it fiercely at the 2 small bottles. A large amount of wood missed the 2 bottles and most of the scattered liquid, although some still hit Jennifer's body and burned unsightly holes in her pure white body. Li Ke still remained unharmed. But that doesn't mean Li Ke won't fight back. Convulsed by the short sword hidden in her cloak, Li Ke rushed towards the man who suddenly appeared without saying a word, grabbed his hand that was still about to hold the small bottle, and stabbed it towards the other person's abdomen with one sword. However, the other party's speed is faster than him. The other party just raised their foot and grabbed Li Ke's arm, feeling a sudden pain in their body. Then, uncontrollably, they flew out and smashed onto the fence he had just repaired, smashing it to the ground. The nail on the fence hit Li Ke's back, and he painfully turned over and pulled out the nail, only to touch the blood in one hand. At that moment, the man's voice rang out again. You have good courage and swordsmanship, but your speed is too slow. You probably haven't received the training of a warrior, kid. Wait, you can actually wear a lock armor. Li Ke looked up and saw a crossbow that the man had pulled out at an unknown time. He had no time to react, so he watched helplessly as the man pulled the trigger of the crossbow. The crossbow arrow pierced directly into his throat, causing him to tremble and take a few steps back, covering his own throat. However, blood continued to flow into his trachea from his damaged blood vessels, and the rapid breathing caused by the intense pain made him choke on his own blood, continuously oozing blood foam from his throat and mouth. The lock armor he took from the blacksmith's shop was of no use to him, and the attacker's superb skills directly extinguished all his resistance abilities. The strength quickly dissipated from his body, and the attacker pulled out a slender sword and elegantly walked up to Li Ke's side. He glanced at the sword that Li Ke had dropped to the ground before directly bullying him and stabbing it through Li Ke's armpit. The cold, sword-oil-wielding sword avoided the lock armor that Li Ke had taken from the blacksmith's shop, stabbed into his body under his armpit, shuttled through his lungs, and then crawled out of his neck. Then, the attacker gracefully turned around, causing Li Ke's body to fall to the ground and drew out his own sword. During this process, not even a drop of fresh blood flowed onto his body. Without looking at Li Ke, who was still struggling on the ground, the attacker walked towards Jennifer, who was rolling on the ground and had already begun to faint. You, and that poor kid, don't blame me, but who let your beauty bring some bad situations? He looked at Jennifer with a face full of regret. If it weren't for the employer's requirement to make Jennifer suffer from physical disabilities and ruin her appearance, instead of disappearing from the mortal world, he would definitely bring such a beautiful woman home to the basement. Unfortunately, his master would not allow this beautiful woman to threaten his daughter's happy marriage. Sorry, miss. He pulled out his sword and was about to cut off Jennifer's fingers and toes. As for why is there only one target, but he still wants to kill Li Ke. Doing things requires professionalism, and one cannot show any connection to their owner, so they can only disguise themselves as robbers. At this moment, Li Ke, who had fallen to the ground, remained sober. He knew he should make the final move, but his lungs, which were completely unable to breathe, and the intense pain made him unable to move. He could only constantly twitch on the ground, but the convulsions caused by the intense pain would bring even stronger pain. He didn't know why the person came to attack Jennifer along with him, but what he knew was that he would be defeated and easily killed. It's because I don't have the strength. Power. Lee Ku's final obsession kept reciting this vocabulary, and he was frantically thinking about how he could survive from such a situation. And as if hearing his response, the gift left by the demon bloomed in his body. Lee Ku, whose vitality was rapidly fading, felt something revive from within. In his teary eyes, he could only see a shimmering green light. This is evil energy. At the moment when the evil energy appeared, the spell left by Métis in his mind also appeared from his memory, making him subconsciously press the evil energy in his hand onto his throat. Chaos, the wild evil energy immediately corroded the flesh and blood in his throat and the poison crossbow arrow. The pungent smell and molten iron flowed out of Lee Ku's throat, and his skin was directly reflected green by the shining evil energy. He almost instinctively used a spell of evil energy. The evil energy in his body quickly entered his neck, and his skin and flesh began to roll. Under the action of the evil energy, the cells crazily split and continued to wriggle. Not only that, the evil energy in his body also began to take effect. The wound under his armpit sprayed out a green scent, and a foul smell of sulfur sprayed out of his body. Along with it, it also sprayed out damaged tissue and blood stasis. If Métis sees this scene, she will definitely be surprised because it is something that even her native demon finds difficult to achieve. Let the evil do the work it should do obediently. The blood that blocked the blood vessels was burned by the evil energy, and the wound that constantly caused severe pain returned to its original state after another sharp pain. Apart from the shining presence of the evil energy, everything remained the same as before. The wound under the armpit also healed directly, and the heavily injured lungs were full of strength. Moreover, Lee Ku felt that she was full of strength at this moment. Unprecedented power. Picking up the short sword on the ground, Lee Ku couldn't help but let out a roar and jumped towards the man who had killed him once. What? Upon hearing the wind, the attacker who had just cut off one of Jennifer's fingers turned their head and immediately blocked Lee Ku's attack path with their sword. He still took a step slower. Lee Ku's sword is faster than him. His head suddenly split in half with his chest, and his sturdy and tall body collapsed to the ground after convulsing a few times. He's dead. End of this chapter.